Okay, today we are going to read The Talking Skull, a fable from Cameroon by Donna L. Washington. And this is e-learning day 17. Okay, so Donna L. Washington is a professional storyteller, actress, and author. In this fable from Cameroon, a man finds a talking skull and decides to take it to his village. As you read, take notes on what the villagers think about the man in the story. So that's what we're looking at, the villagers. Okay, so once a man was walking down the road toward his village. He was not paying attention to anything around him. This man considered himself a scholar of life. He was always deep in thought. He liked to think about important things. He did not put his mind to ordinary problems. If it wasn't impossible, or at very if it wasn't impossible or at least very complicated, he didn't care about it at all. This man spent all day looking out over the ocean, and he only noticed things he thought were useful. He didn't notice the beauty of the ocean. The only things he considered were sharks and shipwrecks. He didn't notice the clear blue sky. He was thinking about all the storms that must have been churning far away. He did not notice the wonderful songs of the birds. He only thought about how many of their nests had been robbed. He didn't notice the playful animals swinging through branches or rustling in the grass. He only wondered whether or not the great cats were on the prowl. That was the kind of man he was. So, question one says the man is focused on analyzing the world rather than noticing its beauty, open to any new form of knowledge that he encounters, too proud to admit he doesn't know something, focused on the details of the world, especially their beauty. Okay, so he is very focused on the details, but it says here that he didn't notice the beauty. So I think our best answer is A. He analyzes. Analyze means that he thinks about a lot. Okay, so he thinks about the world a lot rather than noticing its beauty. Okay. As he walked back toward the village that day, he happened to pass a pile of bones. They were bleached white and they gleamed in the bright sun. He stopped and stared down at them. He was the sort of man who would stop and stare down at a pile of bones. The skull on the pile was resting above the other bones, and it seemed to be watching the man just as intently as he was watching it. The man reached out and picked up the skull. He held it one way and then another. He looked gravely into the empty eye sockets and said, "What brought you here, brother?" "Talking," the skull replied without much interest. The man was so shocked he dropped the skull and jumped back. He watched the skull for a few minutes before he managed to stammer out, "You can talk." "Yes," said the skull. "Talking is very easy. All you have to do is open up your mouth and out it comes. Talking is easy. Finding something worthwhile to say is not." Okay, so which of the following describes the skull's opinions on talking? You should speak the truth. It is better to always remain silent. Your words should be important. It's important to speak respectfully to others. So right here where he says finding something worthwhile to say, that something worthwhile is something that is important. Okay, so C is going to be our answer for that one. Okay, so let's continue. The man was amazed. He had never seen a talking skull before, let alone one that could spout such wisdom. "I must take you to the village," the man exclaimed. He scooped up the skull and ran as fast as he could. The villagers saw him coming, and a great many of them ran for their homes. You see, he was the kind of man who was always getting busy people into useless conversations when there was work to be done. He never seemed to be quiet, and he never spoke about anything anyone ever wanted to hear. As he entered the village, he called out to his neighbors, "Come quickly! I have something wonderful to show you." No one came. The man was so excited that he did not even realize that the few people in sight were moving away from him. "Put down whatever you're doing, everyone. I have a marvelous mystery to show all of you, the likes of which you have never seen before." When the man said the word mystery, you can be sure he got the attention of some of the villagers. They started poking their heads out of their houses. Women left their yams cooking, men put down their digging sticks, and children stopped their playing. They all began to gather around the man. So, the villagers came to listen to the man because he always had something interesting to say. They value his intelligence. He claims to have something unbelievable, or they fear what will happen if they don't. Okay, so right here, it says he got the attention because of the word mystery. So a lot of times something mysterious is unbelievable. So C is our best choice answer there. Okay, now here we go. What he saw that he had, when he saw that he had everyone's attention, he drew out the skull. He could not have prepared himself for what happened next. Everyone stared at the skull for a moment. Then they all started yelling, "Mama, what is he doing?" cried a little boy. "How dare you bring that thing here?" his mother howled, waving a spoon. "Somebody do something," said another, clutching her child. "Send him away," demanded a third mother. The men, who still had gardening tools in their hands, started waving them. "Move out of the way," yelled a man with a digging stick. "Somebody get the chief," said the old man, holding his grandson's hand. There was so much commotion, the chief came to see what was happening. "What is going on?" the chief roared. He was a very orderly chief, and he did not like all the shelling and brandishing of gardening tools in the middle of the village. All the people were silent except for one villager. He stood up and pointed to the man with the skull. "This man told us he had something to show us. Then he pulled out that awful skull. We thought he was trying to call the dark spirits to the village, and we were trying to stop him." So, how do the villagers react to the skull? They are honored to be in the presence of the skull. They are afraid that children will want to play with the skull. They are sad to see the skull of a fellow human. They are worried about how the man could use the skull. Okay, so this one is they're talking about dark spirits in the village. Okay, so they are worried what the man is going to do. "Oh," said the chief, eyeing the man with the skull. "And were you going to call dark spirits to my village?" "Certainly not," the scholar declared, glad that the chief was there. He was sure the chief would understand this intellectual matter. "Then what were you doing?" the chief asked with curiosity. "Well," the man said in a pompous voice, "I was on my way home from the ocean when I came across a pile of bones. On top of the heap was the skull. It spoke to me. I brought it here to share this wonder with the village." The chief did not look convinced. "I'll show you," the man said, raising the skull so that it looked at the chief. "Say something to the chief," he commanded. The skull said nothing. The chief frowned. "Speak," the man said. "I command you." The skull remained silent. One of the children laughed. "Speak," he said. "You must speak." The man started getting nervous. The skull said nothing. The man begged and pleaded with the skull. The skull remained silent. The people began to get angry again, and the chief got angry right along with them. "You are always a troublemaker in my village, and now you come here with this nonsense." The chief and the people had had enough. They took the skull from the man, found the mound of bones he had taken it from, and put it back there. So the chief agrees with the villagers because the man is clearly confused. The skull doesn't speak. The skull calls on dark spirits. The man admits that he is trying to fool people. Well, what happens here is the skull is not actually talking. Okay, so let's finish out the story. That very day, the villagers held a meeting with the chief and decided to throw the man out of their village. They watched him collect his few belongings and said to him, "Since you found that skull so much company, why don't you go live with it?" The man stormed out of the village and down the road to the pile of bones. He picked up the skull. Before he could get one word out of his mouth, the skull said, "Sorry about that." "What? Now you talk? This is not going to do me much good. Why didn't you say something back in the village?" "I told you," the skull replied. "It's easy to talk. It's not always easy to find something worthwhile to say." "You are absolutely unpleasant," the man screamed. "I don't know what trouble you caused that brought you all this sorry state, but you deserve everything you got. I already told you what got me into trouble, the skull replied. Talking. Same as you. So the skull and the man are similar because they both talk too little. Neither of them get along with others. Their talking is disagreeable to others, or neither of them notice beauty. Well, um, it's something to do with talking. So I'm going to eliminate B and D. And it wasn't that they talked too much little, it's that they talked too much. Okay. People didn't like what they said. So it's C. Now let's go on to the questions. Which statement identifies the theme of the short story? You shouldn't think so highly of yourself that you speak when it's not valuable. The wisest words often come from the people we least expect to hear them. It is hard to earn back someone's trust after misleading them, or words can be dangerous and cause. So right here, A is the one that we are looking at. Okay, so which two details from the text best support your answer to part A? So, A, the man spent all of his day looking out over the ocean and only noticed things he thought was useful. The man was amazed. He had never seen a talking skull before, let alone one that could spout such wisdom. You see, he was the kind of man who was always getting busy people into useless conversations when there was work to be done, and he never spoke about anything anyone ever wanted to hear. Okay, so this one definitely supports that. So we're going to go with C. Let's see if we can find another one. This man told us he had something to show us. Then he pulled out that awful skull. We thought he was trying to call the dark spirits to the village, and we were trying to stop him. That very day, the villagers held a meeting with the chief and decided to throw the man out of their village. They watched him collect his few belongings. I told you, the skull replied, it's easy to talk. It's not always easy to find something worthwhile to say. So right here, this one that has to do with talking also is the answer. So C and F. Okay. What does the man's reputation, how does the man's reputation affect how the villagers treat him? A, the man has told several lies in the past, which makes people suspicious of him. B, the man hasn't taken the time to help the villagers with their problems, which makes them stop asking him questions. The man has always spoken thoughtlessly to the villagers, which makes them less likely to believe him. The man looks down at the villagers for their beliefs, which discourages them from trusting him. So, this one, all of them were ignoring him when he was talking until he talked about the mystery. So, this one makes the most sense. But now we have to support that. So, when the man said the word mystery, you can be sure he got the attention of some villagers. They started poking their heads out of their houses. Well, the man said in a pompous voice, I was on my way home from the ocean when I came across a pile of bones. On top of the heap was the skull. It spoke to me. You are always a troublemaker in my village, and now you come here with this nonsense. The chief and the people had had enough. They watched him collect his few belongings and said to him, since you found the skull so much company, why don't you go live with it? So right here, this one, C, talks about him being a troublemaker. Now, last one says, how does the character of the talking skull reveal the author's point of view in the story? So the author does several things with the skull, but the biggest thing is when up here, it says, what brought you here, brother? And he said, talking. And this, talking is very easy. This part right here, okay? So the skull gives the man a warning, and the man doesn't understand it because then at the end of the story, he gets kicked out of the village for talking, and so that is really the point of view on the story. So you can write me about that.